I liked it. And I'm not gonna sit here and convince you to try and like it. Little Nightmares 3 has been a long time coming. After a couple release dates, between the many teasers, trailers, and all of the hype that built up to its release, it felt like we were waiting for something that was maybe impossible to live up to. Little Nightmares fans are a hungry bunch. The franchise is a true cult classic, which can be hard to meet expectations, and yet, when I finally played it after all this time, I walked away from it thinking that it made sense. Now, was it perfect? I'll let you decide that. There are places where the pacing stumbles, moments where the gameplay could have been pushed and explored new grounds with less repetition, I think, and a few elements that left me wishing for more, I guess. But having said that, really, overall, it struck that balance between familiar and fresh in a way that personally worked for me. So, in this video, I want to share why Little Nightmares 3 clicked with me, what I think it nailed about the story, the characters, and the world building, and also where I think it can go from here. Because whether you loved it or you still can't decide, it's definitely worth talking about. Having said all that, I think Little Nightmares 3 is not for fans of Little Nightmares games. I think it's for fans of the nowhere and the mysteries it hides. Now, warning, there are obviously Little Nightmares 3 spoilers beyond this point, so watch it. Low and Alone felt like a perfect fit for the world of Little Nightmares 3. They carried that same intrigue the past protagonists had, but also brought something new to the table. And for the first time in the series, we had a child with a clear personal drive. Low's determination to escape the nowhere gave his journey real weight that we hadn't seen, and it made his conclusion both powerful and heartbreaking. Alone, before we learn that she's Low's imaginary friend, plays the role of the ideal companion. Always encouraging, always there to lift him up when he feels lost. And that reveal at the end recontextualized everything that makes her support hit even harder. And then seeing Low actually wake up in what looks like maybe a real-world institute was fascinating because it's the first time we've seen a protagonist cross the boundary. Honestly, picking these two characters as our guides through this nightmare felt like one of the best choices the game actually made, and considering all the risks with Tarsier leaving and Supermassive stepping in, I'm grateful it turned out as well as it did. Now, the monsters, though, in this game quite possibly had a hindrance on the experience and heightened the comparisons drawn to previous installments of Little Nightmares. The residents of the Nowhere are an extremely intriguing mystery that perpetuates probably a lot of the fandom in general. How did they get there? What do they do to the kids when they catch them? Why are they doing that? The monster baby is the first and the shortest monster presence in the game, and I think reason for that is because we'll get more media concerning her backstory. As a lot of us know, the Little Nightmares Showcase showed us so very much planned content coming through the pipeline in the coming months, one particularly being a stop-motion film with a little girl who is most definitely wearing the same dress as the monster baby. And in the end, I do also feel like the monster baby was executed well. The magnitude, the weight, the threat, and that desperation that came before from the dwellers. Then when we find ourselves in the factory with the workers and the supervisor, now this is an area I think I could get behind giving a bit more juice. It was very stylized, the area. Here's the thing, I love this setting, the aura that this place gives. And the idea of these workers just being towed around is pretty amazing and shows quite a bit of world building in itself. But we're never interacting with a single one of these workers. We do drop one to his death, but other than that, nothing. Which is unfortunate because the chase scenes that we get from the guests in Little Nightmares 1 or the viewers in Little Nightmares 2 were some of the most intense moments we got in those games. Granted, I know these big boys cannot run, but even so, them in a swing makes the chase sequence all the more interesting. And the supervisor as a whole is a really cool concept. I think what is strange about her is that she's a mannequin spider, a creature of sorts, but in the past, all of the best antagonists were just somewhat human, if not just transformed by addiction, gluttony, etc. The supervisor seems to be a workaholic, which is a good start. But in this particular moment, I missed wondering how she became that way. I didn't feel that urge to question her background, if she's been in the nowhere for a long time, or if she grew up there. Was she a kid at all? After the supervisor, we have a formal introduction to the kin and minikin, someone we've heard descriptions of in the Sounds of Nightmares podcast. And this was something I was very excited to see. And honestly, I think they're my favorite nowhere resident design out of all of the games. The fact that the kin is capturing children and forcing them to dance and juggle in front of a dead silent audience is crazy to me. Very nightmarish in my opinion. And then Minikin being a totally separate entity that is attached to his arm, but can come unattached and start banging his food dish like an animal is worrying. I think that is such a cool character design that I did not see coming, even though I listened to the Sounds of Nightmares. I think his purpose in the nowhere is very clear, and his chase sequence was horrifying, albeit a little buggy toward the end there. But then finally, the feeling of escaping him via hot air balloon, that relief, and then major worry as the lightning strikes us down into the clutches of the hypnotist. The one and only Otto made it into the nowhere. And I think this was truly well done. I've seen, the story's locked behind other media, but it's not like the podcast isn't completely free to listen to, nor a chore to listen to. It's extremely good. Hearing instead of seeing a story play out in the Little Nightmares world is a perfect foil to the games too, because we get to hear the thoughts of Otto and learn even more about how the nowhere is accessed, whether you're a child or an adult, apparently. The way that the discoveries that we found stacked up on top of each other and slowly started to make sense. Even the standalone story that Little Nightmares 3 was building, finding out that, maybe Alone is actually an imaginary friend, all while seeing things like Otto's candy jar, Noon's room, and even the machine Otto uses on her. Moving on to the locations, the bread and butter of any Little Nightmares game. 90% of the lore Little Nightmares has given us all throughout the games was insinuated through the background. And this game stayed true to that style. In fact, while I love the character development throughout the game, the locations were the true star. First point, I loved the fact that we were traveling what seemed like long distances throughout the spiral the entire game. It made me feel like the real purpose of this game was to tell us the nowhere is a large, stretching world with so many different types of climates, terrains, attractions, decay, and transportation. While the carnival is the location that explains itself the loudest, my favorite is the necropolis. The relationship the dwellers had with the birds, seemingly grinding their bones up for rituals, which in turn show the relationship with the monster baby and the dwellers. I just feel like Little Nightmares 3 is going to be at the center of all this media that will soon be rolling out. The stop-motion project obviously has something to do with the monster baby, the comics will elaborate more on the adult perspective from the counties, and the novel where we got to see inside the mind of children who had just been permanently placed in this awful nightmare. Now, the gameplay, I'll be honest here, I've never come to a Little Nightmares game looking for amazing gameplay. The depth of the dollhouse style can be very frustrating at times. The puzzles can be maybe too easy and definitely repetitive. I do think that Little Nightmares 3 aimed to make things a little less repetitive by adding items like the umbrella, but it definitely fell short. Saying that, I never missed the umbrella once it was taken away, but I do wish we got to use it more. Again, I don't come to Little Nightmares to sweat and even really to solve puzzles. I play these games to discover more about this crazy world called the Nowhere and the implications it has on my favorite characters that have found themselves in there. I think Little Nightmares 3 delivered on all of that, and even more so with all the media that's coming out. And hey, maybe that's just enough for me to absolutely love the game. You could tell this was a love letter to the previous games. There are countless examples of winks and nods to what has happened in the other games. The gunshot at the carnival, Alone holding low over a cliffside, the gluttonous herd as we sneak past, and that makes me think, maybe that's Supermassive letting us know, hey, we aren't here to change things, we're here to pull back the curtain to show you what's been here the entire time. I hope that gets my point across. Thanks for watching all the way to the very end. I really appreciate it. Let me know how you liked Little Nightmares 3. What was your favorite location, your favorite resident? What was your least favorite resident? Let me know down below, and I will see you next time. Peace!